Hey folks, this is just a quick unscripted response video because my last one was received so incredibly well. Subscribe if you're new, another new video this Thursday. So this is a video from a YouTuber, Ryan Kinel, I don't know, I'm not gonna bother learning his name. He's one of the Geeks and Gamers people, and he is criticizing specifically the MCU's sudden push for more Kingpin in their media. Kingpin, of course, being the character played by Vincent D'Onofrio, Wilson Fisk. One of the most interesting and my favorite villains, I think, from the entire, I guess technically MCU now, since they apparently canonized the Daredevil show. Good for them. Now, this entire video is marred by the fact that it's not clear to me if Ryan realizes that Kingpin is a bad guy. Like you would think from the way that he's talking about him that they're emasculating some fantastic hero of ours, when in fact the things that Kingpin does are bad and he is wrong for doing them. But we'll let Ryan talk so that you can see what I mean.
As soon as Marvel announced that they were moving forward with the Echo series, fans knew immediately it was going to be a disaster. A show that no one was asking for, that was created solely for the purpose of pushing their diversity and identity politics agenda at Disney and with the MCU.
Oh, and I should probably make clear, I haven't seen Hawkeye in a while, and I don't really feel like rewatching it for the purposes of this video, but I did watch Echo, and I, for the most part, liked it. I'd give it a solid, 7 out of 10. Easily one of the better Marvel shows, which I know isn't saying much, but still. I do, however, think that it's interesting that he and several other people in this sphere open up their videos talking about how apparently Marvel is making shows that nobody asked for, to which I have to ask, what do you want then? Like, for years we've been complaining that they're boring, that they're not coming out with new stuff, that they're not being creative, that they're not taking risks, and then the second that they start actually kind of almost doing that, it's a problem to you. Oh, suddenly no one's asking for this. Well, yeah, nobody was asking for Guardians of the Galaxy, and then they made it, and it was good. More interestingly, though, when he starts talking about how Echo is supposedly pushing this woke MCU agenda, I have to ask myself, what the hell do you people want? Because for the longest time, and I imagine they probably still gesture at this, these sorts of people would say they don't mind having disabled characters or minority characters or women in media as long as it's factored into the story, as long as it's a part of their character and not just some, diversity tick box thing, which granted is an embarrassingly ridiculous way to think about media. Give me your autistic, gay, black, trans woman in any story. Don't bother explaining it. I don't care. But nonetheless, okay, fine, if we're adopting this idea, every single demographic that Maya belongs to in this show factors directly into the story in very significant ways. I've seen people simply list her demographic factors as an argument in and of itself that somehow a Native American deaf amputee is just a bad idea for a TV show. But Echo is one of the few shows that actively incorporates every single one of those elements into her story in very significant ways. You could not tell this story if she wasn't an amputee. You could not tell this story if she wasn't deaf. You could not tell this story if she wasn't a Native American. You could tell similar stories and come up with similar ideas, but this is something that's distinct. The fact that she's an amputee, for instance, factors into it. It becomes a source of conflict in certain parts of the story. It becomes a visual representation of trauma that happened to her in her childhood, and it also serves as an interesting part of her costume. The fact that she's deaf factors significantly into her relationship with Kingpin, and also factors interestingly into her means of communication. And of course, her being indigenous is incredibly significant to this whole entire story. I don't even feel like I need to justify that one. I mean, obviously it doesn't need to be justified at all. Those things can just be a part of a character, but if we're going down that route, we may as well.
But once people realized that Kingpin would be such a big part of the series, they had a lot of fears as well, because we've already seen Kingpin get destroyed in his MCU debut. They completely ruined his character, only to go on and get beat, not even by Hawkeye, but instead by Kate Bishop. And of course, shot in the head by Echo, but somehow miraculously surviving. Well, at this point, I wish they would have just killed him, because what did they do in the Echo series? They just made him get beaten again by a cringe girl boss.
Again, I don't really want to rewatch Hawkeye all that much right now. I mean, Kingpin played a minor role in that anyway, so really what happened to him in that is kind of immaterial to me. But I do find it interesting how this whole series of stories is destroying Kingpin's character by making him weak, but then we're also going to complain about the fact that he's strong enough to survive a bullet when it's been made pretty clear that he's just physically more powerful than humans, to the point that he probably at some point gave himself superpowers of some variety. Okay, and he continues to refer to Maya from Echo as a girl boss in this video, which to me demonstrates the fact that this term has lost all meaning. See, at a certain point, a girl boss referred to a female character who was ridiculously powerful, who didn't need to learn and grow, was just perfect from the beginning, and didn't face any meaningful adversity besides people who wanted to stop her, and she just needed to stop them. But in the case of this particular show, every single major female character has significant barriers that they need to cross. Of course, Echo herself has to learn to care about her family and to not keep treating the people in her life like garbage, which I would argue is a pretty significant character flaw if you ask me. Her grandmother needs to learn the appropriate way to treat her family in a completely different way, with her abandoning people that care about her because she's too emotionally unwell to handle looking at them, which again is a really, really bad thing, a really significant character flaw that she needs to get over. And really, that's pretty much it for major female characters, at least that have a whole lot of emotional storytelling surrounding them. So this show incorporates two major female characters, and neither of them are girl bosses, even remotely. And to me, I guess what this suggests is that while they may not be consciously lying, they are being dishonest when they say that they're fine with women leading TV shows as long as they're not written to be overpowered or ridiculously morally superior to everyone around them, because this is not even remotely that show in the slightest. Maya was literally an antagonist in her previous series, and here needs to learn to undo a lot of the damage that she did as an antagonist. It's really as simple as they just don't like women. Like that's the only justification for any of this behavior. And as much as it's nice that that's being laid out on the table, I wish that we would stop pretending that it's anything other than that.
They just made him get beaten again by a cringe girl boss in Echo with the powers of her ancestors in one of the most embarrassing ways possible. She tried to heal the wounds inside him, in his heart, in his head, and literally he was defeated because Echo made him cry, and he ran out crying like a little bitch. The second time we've seen him in the MCU, and the second time that he runs away after getting beaten by a woman. This is now the Kingpin in the MCU.
But okay, this is the big part that I wanted to talk about, the bit that interested me the most, and that's this idea that Kingpin is being emasculated, that in some way they are making him into some weak little bitch. And I have to ask you, if you don't like that, if you don't like the character of Wilson Fisk, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, being emasculated, do you like Daredevil? Like at all? Like the show, the Netflix series Daredevil? Like, I shit you not, his first meaningful dialogue scene in the Daredevil show is him failing awkwardly to flirt with a woman to an unbelievable extent. And I do feel the need to make it clear that even though he does end up winning this woman over, it's not because he's charismatic or because he's good at talking to women. It's because she's weird.
Yes, I was actually wondering if you cared to join me for dinner.
I'm the only one working here tonight.
There's an entire subplot throughout the first season surrounding the fact that Wilson doesn't like his associates and his employees using his name, and it is stated by the show in a way that's made very clear that it's supposed to be communicated to the audience that he asks people not to use his name, or he demands that people don't use his name, because using his name would betray that he's just a man, that he's not this special, super powerful force. He's just one guy. Literally just an entire subplot making unambiguously clear that this man is incredibly weak and that he tries to appear more powerful than he actually is. So I guess in a certain sense, it's funny that it worked on these people, that these people saw that, people aren't allowed to say his name and they thought, oh yeah, that's cool. But it's not cool. That was the whole point of the show. It was the whole, at least half of the point of the show. I mean, the other half of his character is related to corruption and a bunch of other really interesting stuff. But in terms of him as a character, him being incredibly weak, unable to get over his past trauma to the point that he takes it out on the people around him, is center to every single arc related to this man.
Его начальник. Знаешь, почему Фиск не хочет, чтобы кто-то знал его имя? Потому что это предаст, что он просто человек.
Like, I feel like if we had a scene today in which Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin was intimidated by an elderly Chinese woman to the point that he absolutely lost his mind and started throwing shit, they would complain about how woke it is and how this woman shouldn't be intimidating to this man, and look, she's emasculating him. But of course, that happened in season 1. That was a pretty significant part of his character.
我之所以会发现，是因为你变得懒散、情绪化。
So we fast forward to the Echo show, and one thing that I appreciated about this show was that they kept his lore pretty consistent. They didn't change things up from the Daredevil shows to the point where if you knew that show, if you had seen it, you already knew a lot of some of the plot twists that were coming, and if you didn't know, then I guess it was kind of a surprise to you. I don't know, I kind of like when you can have kind of that double experience with the show. But they continue to center his fraught relationship with his father, the unambiguous villain whose big line was telling his son to be a man, no social commentary there. And they made it clear that that story, that experience, that relationship with his father was pretty much his weakness. The only other weakness being his, I guess you can charitably call it, love for a certain subset of people, Maya included. See, at the very end of the show, Maya uses her powers that have been built up as this really significant thing throughout the entire series. It's not something that came completely out of nowhere. She uses those to exploit his specific weakness, that being his relationship with his father. And it's pretty clear that the only reason she even was given the opportunity to exploit this weakness is because he has a weakness for her as well. This is, and I cannot believe that I'm saying it about a Disney Plus Marvel show, good writing. She's not physically stronger than him. Most people that he goes up against aren't physically stronger than him. The only thing that she can take advantage of are his emotions, are his weaknesses for certain people in his life. Something that's been the case for the entire fucking duration of this character's existence.
There's this underlining feeling like there's a bomb ticking under the table. I've hurt people, and I'm going to hurt more. That bomb is Fisk's emotions.
Like, I don't want to spoil stuff past season 1 of Daredevil, but rest assured, emotional weaknesses are something that Daredevil exploits in this character fairly significantly. What I guess kind of like tops all of this off is that his physical prowess isn't even the thing that makes Kingpin scary. Kingpin is scary because of you never know who's on his side. You never know who he's got in his pocket. And so there becomes this element of suspense, particularly in Hell's Kitchen, as you have no idea who you're interacting with. You have no way of trusting people. He lives in the shadows. So beyond, like, even if he were being emasculated in some way on this front, that's not even the reason why this character matters. No, anyone can be a big, strong, tough guy. It's just, and I'm sorry, I know that this video is kind of non-linear and I keep going back to different things, but there's an entire episode of season 1 of Daredevil in which it's shown that this painting that he purchased earlier on in the series was simply a surrogate for the wall that he used to stare at while his father beat his mother, demonstrating the fact that he never got over that and that that's still something that he wants regulating his life to this day. Like, this is not an emotionally stable or mentally well man.
You embarrassed me. Embarrassed me in front of her.
I don't know what to say to people like this. To Ryan, your only criticisms of this show are either A, criticisms that apply to the original Daredevil, or they're just like bad and oftentimes sexist. Like, those are basically the two options that you have. And I guess there's an extent to which a lot of these people probably don't like the shows that they proclaim to like, or at least don't care about them as much as actual fans of those shows do. I know that that's kind of a controversial statement, but like, I do not understand how a person could watch Daredevil and miss the point this fucking hard and still come away thinking it's a good show. Like, okay, fine, I'll grant that you're media illiterate enough that you didn't catch any of this stuff, but then why would you even like the show? That's the reason why people care about it, is because it has this really interesting, emotionally unstable villain and a weird relationship with the protagonist who is also emotionally unstable. I guess my message to anybody who watches this video, whether you be a fan of Ryan's or his communities, or somebody who hasn't seen either of these shows, is watch the show. For fans of Ryan, I recommend you watch Echo. You'll probably like it more than you would expect to do so. I don't anticipate you thinking it's a masterpiece. It's not quite on that level or anything, but it's pretty solid, and you'll definitely like it more than Ryan's leading you to believe you will. And to Ryan specifically, you should watch Daredevil. It's a good show. I quite like it. Anyhow, that's really all that I have for today. Is just a response to some really dumb arguments. I have a video coming out this Thursday, responding to a progressive who I think has incredibly bad takes on incels. So, stay tuned for that. Like, subscribe, and, just have a chill time.